Hello, thank you for joining me once again. I am continuing the reading of The Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by Jon Peniel. Thank you for continuing listening along with me. We are on Chapter 8, the Chapter of Love. Please take the time to subscribe, like, and share so that others may be able to receive this important message as well. So, we are on page 92 if you're reading along. So without further ado, Chapter 8, Love. During my first week at the monastery, I attended a course taught by the elder monk Claire, in which I learned about the important fundamentals of the children's teachings. They were beautifully basic and, as she put it, simple. The teachings of the Children of the Law of One are very simple and have two basic aspects to them, which are referred to as a foundation and an essence. The foundation of the teachings is basically this: all beings, all things are one. And suffering is the result of humans forgetting that and not acting as one. Thus, all the problems of the earth would cease with the achievement of universal consciousness. So breaking the illusion of separation and returning to conscious awareness of oneness should be our goal if we want to exist in a positive and harmonious world. And the teachings stress personal experience of oneness with the universe through any meditation or spiritual attunement method that works for you. Not taking them on faith or intellectualizing it from a book or lecture. I was still groggy and having a hard time getting down my boiled socks tea to get any help from some caffeine. Yet I was still getting it for the most part. But while the foundations of the teachings is oneness, the essence of the teachings is unselfish love. It is considered both the most important means to achieve universal consciousness and the end result. And the end certainly justifies the means in this case. I already had an idea about what unselfish love meant and how difficult and painful it could be. In fact, the book I mentioned earlier, Stranger in a Strange Land, really conceptualized or grounded out this idea for me. But at the time, it was still just an idea that I thought was great and really liked. Before I came to the monastery, I tried to apply it by being unjealous about my girlfriend. Idealistic fool that I was, made an unselfishly loving gesture to my girlfriend. I told her she could have affairs with other men as long as they were good guys and someone I also knew and loved. But when she actually had an affair with my best friend, even though it was open, and I knew about it and agreed to it because of my newfound intellectual principles, I came up against the great selfish beast in myself. I went through hell, but I controlled myself and dealt with it, okay? No one got hurt except my emotions and ego. But that incident had occurred fully 2 years prior and thus was all ancient history to me in my young point of view. But now it was more than just a girlfriend at issue. Becoming a monk meant giving up all desires and selfish possessiveness. Even though we were not a celibate order, I could no longer accept anyone to belong to me and be mine. I had undertaken the task of learning to love all people, whether they loved you back or not. And I had a lot to learn about what that meant still. For a while now, ever since I had been at the monastery, I'd had a thing for Anastasia. I thought I loved her. I was in love with her. But the reality of things, as far as what I was experiencing, was I was developing envy, jealousy, and possessive desires. From what I'd already learned, I knew that wasn't something that should or even possibly can go hand in hand with real love. Obviously, while I understood it intellectually, I still didn't understand it as a reality in my life. I had not realized love yet, unselfish love. My only real understanding of love was the relationships I had, family, friends, and women. I thought they were basically unselfish and really loving. But I was in for an awakening about that, and more than one awakening discussed in the soulmate chapter. And then there was also the issue of loving God and God's love. As a child, I was taught that God loved us. But part of my becoming an atheist was because of the horrible conditions and suffering in the world. How could such terrible things happen, especially to innocent children and animals, if God loved us? I eventually went to Zayn with all this that was troubling me. And he started by giving me a long list of texts to look up at the library. So this is all written in italic for the ancient quotes. Above all, love. God is not loving. God is not unloving. God is love. God love, and you can give God. Excuse me. Let me start that whole one over. God is not loving. God is not unloving. God is love. God, give love, and you give God. Give love, and you get God. The universal one is love. Find oneness at all cost. In finding oneness, you find God. In finding oneness, you find yourself. In finding oneness, you find real love. Living as one is to unselfishly love all. Living as one is to unselfishly love yourself. To find oneness, unselfishly love others before yourself. True love is unselfish. True love is giving. True love flows out like the waters, nurturing all who would drink from it. True love does as the stars. True love does as the sun. It shines on the evil as well as the righteous. True love seeks nothing in return. True love is untainted by wants. True love desires only furtherance of true love. True love is strong in the right. True love is indignant in the face of deceit. True love is kind. True love is compassionate. True love is caring. True love is creation. To become truly loving, find someone who truly loves. Empty yourself and let their love fill you. Then keep not the love you have found to yourself, for only in giving it away will you always have it. Unselfish love is the way of daily balance. Imagine a world full of people who are all loving unselfishly. Does any self go without receiving love? All receive love. Imagine a world full of people who all love selfishly. Do any go without receiving love? None receive love. Feel unselfish love. If your thoughts are not accompanied by feeling unselfish love, can what you are thinking be correct? I want to know what love is. I found Zayn returning from the little adept monk's refuge, a pyramid that was at the end of the long path that wound up the hill from the monastery. I met him part way up the path. Then we wandered the beautiful green countryside as we spoke. So, you've been up a little pyramid, eh, Father? How did you know? He said sarcastically. What goes on in there anyway? We get away from young monks that bug us with too many questions constantly. No, really. Is it just a glorified officers' club or teachers' lounge, but without any drinks, socializing, or fun? You'd be surprised. Wild parties, eh? Do you have something serious to ask me, or do you just want to torment me with your attempts at humor? Okay, so you don't appreciate my jokes, but you haven't heard the one about the wokes yet. And I won't right now if I have any choice. I'm sorry. I think I make even more jokes sometimes when I have something serious on my mind. That's natural. Humor lightens our burdens and can lighten or deflect some of the effects of negativity or pain in our lives. But don't just joke about something you need to learn, because it tends to neutralize the effects of learning. I do have something I need your help with. I have a problem with understanding love, Father. Sometimes I think I love, then sometimes I see that I must not be truly loving. I know it is necessary to the attainment of enlightenment and becoming one with God, so I need to understand it better. I have read the texts and they helped me, but I haven't changed, so I just know enough to know that I still don't really know for sure what love is. What can I do to really know? Real love is caring without a thought for yourself, caring for all people and caring for a stranger as much as your dear mother, wife, children, etc. And as you are beginning to perceive, unselfish love and oneness are bound together, like two sides of a coin, which I will explain better in a moment. But first, let's deal with your confusion about process of elimination and discuss what people usually call love. Love is probably the most abused word on earth. Some people think they know love is compassion, giving, caring, nurturing, and some do know it, but the word love and even the concept of love is generally used to describe something quite different, something actually selfish and unloving. That's why we take such pains to differentiate the terminology. The description. It is important because it can mean more things than any word in any language. For instance, love is often used to describe something that gives selfish, separate self-pleasure. I love ice cream. What does that mean? It means that the sensation you get from eating ice cream gives yourself a great deal of pleasure. I really love Sam. What does that mean? Since most relationships are based on this separate self-oriented love, in that context, it means that Sam gives you pleasure, so having a relationship with Sam brings you pleasure. Thus, the selfish, separate self wants Sam, wants to have Sam, wants to possess Sam. Yet you say you love Sam. Wrong. You don't really, truly love Sam in the sense of caring, giving, selfless self-sacrifice like a good mother loves her child. There may be an element of that kind of love involved, but it's always strongly overshadowed by the self-centered, selfish kind of love. What they call love in this Sam example is just the normal, typical, mutual possessive, mutual expected, mutually possessive, mutually attached give and take relationship. Each person expects to take and the other is expected to give in order to maintain the relationship. It is one-sided on both sides, you see. So, have two trains on the same track moving towards an eventual head-on collision. That is the kind of relationship most people have and expect to have. Such unselfishly based love is a condition of negative polarity, the way of taking. It is always sucking energy. This is the exact opposite of the condition of positive polarity, the way of being giving. The way of being giving could also be called unselfish loving. It is a basic precept of the children. It is a basic precept of the children that in order to achieve a universal consciousness and fully understand the universe and our place in it, you must unselfishly love. So, it is important to recognize and differentiate between loving unselfishly and loving in a selfish, possessive way. Yes, I think I understand all that. You probably remember the story I told you about my girlfriend, and I did try to love her enough to let her go and not be jealous. And I thought I was doing that at the same time. So I totally agree that it's important to recognize and differentiate between selfish and unselfish love. I do want to achieve unselfish love and universal consciousness. But how do I really know which is which? And when I am feeling selfish love or unselfish love, it's really fooled me once. It's already fooled me once. Start by contemplating your motives for giving or loving. In other words, when you are giving, what do you personally stand to lose or gain from that giving? Is there a selfish motive involved at all? If so, it contaminates any real unselfish giving and love that may have been there also. When you are loving, what will you be getting back from the one you love? For instance, if you give a gift to your lover, don't you expect to get gratitude and extra affection? Selfish motives are behind giving or loving in what could be called a normal relationship. Often, even when people give to their lover, there is a subtle motive to get something back. Because when you give to your lover, feeding their wants and desires, they like it. They get off on it, as you put it. Then they like you because you are giving them the things or feelings they want. And we know that. Thus, you get a response from them that gets you off. That's ideally how it works in a normal relationship, but it's often not the case. There is also an expectation of reciprocation, which is ultimately never met. But I didn't have any selfish motivations when I offered to let my girlfriend go do that. You thought you didn't, but you had a selfish motive also. No, what? You didn't think that if you did that, she would let you do the same. Well, yes, it would have been an assumption, but I didn't do it because of that. I really wanted to live true love and give true love, and I wanted her to be happy. I see in your eyes that you speak the truth, son. You have already learned the lessons of motivation and giving in that way, but you haven't transcended your selfishness yet, and therein was the problem. Yes, and you have much to go through before you will, I'm afraid. I hope not. I had no idea the suffering I would have to endure before I transcended my selfishness regarding women, finally becoming truly unselfishly loving and find true love. But that is a subject for later in the book. Our conversation went on. True love. Is there such thing as true love? Do you mean in the sense of a relationship? He didn't give me time to answer. No matter what, in either case, the answer is the same. What I would call true love is simply unselfish love. Unselfish love radiates to all without exception, so powerfully that it transcends your separate self and is God's love flowing through you to others. You become the vessel that is channeling the universal spirit while also being the universal spirit. It gives to all who would receive. It is like a sun that gives warmth, light, and life to all in all directions simultaneously. If your love is not one that gives to all and loves all, then it is a selfishly based love. If you experience jealousy or possessiveness, then it is a selfishly based love, not true love, not pure love, not unselfish love. Then virtually no one truly loves or experiences receiving true love. Unfortunately, this is true. There are few situations in which most people experience giving pure unselfish love and the unselfish joy that comes from giving it. Yet, it does happen in certain ways from time to time. Mothers have the greatest opportunity for this because of the very nature of their relationship with their children. Mothers cannot expect to get something in return or be reciprocally loved by their young children, as they might expect in a normal relationship. Those who do expect gratitude from a child are going to experience disappointment, because children have not usually developed even the artificial showing of such appreciation at their young age. Most mothers will find joy just knowing they have done something good for their child or that their child is happy. Some parents, both mothers and fathers, have experienced the feeling of the joy of giving unselfishly when they give their child a gift that is from Santa Claus rather than from mom or dad, thus not getting credit for the gift. Also, most mothers would be willing to die for their children. Part of that is genetics of the human animal, but another part is unselfish love. A mother is generally happy rather than jealous when their grown child finds a mate and a pleasurable relationship. There are exceptions to this, of course. One such exception can result in strong feelings of jealousy and dislike towards the grown child's mate, is when there is karma involving past relationship ties between a mother and a child. If the mother in a past life disliked, liked, or was romantically involved with the person who is now her child, there can be problems. Or if the mother disliked or was jealous of the child's new mate in a past life, there will be discord. So there's no reciprocation of love when you love unselfishly. That's not what I said. There can be, but there doesn't need to be. If you feel a need for reciprocation, you aren't purely loving unselfishly. Being giving Unselfishly loving warms the heart and is beneficial to the giver and the one who is being given to. Unselfish love is its own reward. The universal spirit is love. We are like faucets, and the universal spirit is like water. When you open up and let the water flow to all, you are constantly being filled with the water as it passes through. But if you close the faucet off because you mainly desire to keep the water for yourself, it doesn't flow through you and you are left empty, which is what most people do. Yes, and the people who are thus empty because they don't outflow their love, then start looking in a different direction for something to fill them up. Excuse me. If a relationship diversion won't do it for them, if they are not loving and get love from their relationships, which always eventually happens, they do other things. Even if they stay together with someone, they must look for diversions to fill the emptiness of the lack of love and God in their hearts and lives. Desperately, they think, constantly keeping the brain busy so they won't be aware of their emptiness. They pursue selfish pleasures and amusements of all kinds. They go from diversions to diversions. Food, games, clothing, movies, TV, sports, parties, social clubs, hobbies, lovers, shopping, cars, candy, you name it. But there is never any peace and never any real or lasting satisfaction, only a temporary fix. And like a drug addict who needs a fix, the more it gets, the more it needs and wants. But the pleasure never lasts, and the feeling is never the same as the joy you get from giving, and ultimately the connection to the universal spirit that is made through giving. They're left with that hollowness again and the need to find some other distraction. They are really looking for love, looking to replace love, and doing everything but what they really need to do to find it. Give it. Oh, I get it now that you put it that way. He smiled wryly. What do you mean? I said as he shook his head and walked off. I was confused at why he did that at the same time, but later, when I had become more spiritually mature, I realized it was because the tone of my statement reflected my huge ego and that I wasn't listening well enough. So I just stood there for a moment, a little stunned, wondering why Zayn was just walking off like that in the middle of a conversation. He walked fast, too. He was already halfway down the path back towards the monastery. If I hadn't run after him, he'd have already been inside and gone somewhere before I even got to the gate. Father, wait! He just kept walking. When I finally caught up to him, he didn't stop either. It wasn't done. I panted from the lack of oxygen at that altitude. But I just wanted to ask you a few things. He shrugged his shoulders. Later that day, I found him again and asked if he would speak with me some more. Can I pester you with a few more questions now? I said. He smiled in a manner that said, okay. So I started firing off some questions. So one should only seek love to love others and not receive love? Don't misunderstand. There is nothing wrong with receiving love, taking love. In fact, receiving unselfish love is wonderful. It is when you only conditionally give love under the guise of love in order to get something for yourself. That is wrong. It is a serious problem in the world. I have heard it said that you must love yourself first. Only then can you love others. But it seems contradictory to the children's teachings. He stopped walking and looked at me with intensity. It was a look so intense that at one time before I really knew him, it would actually scare me a bit inside. There is nothing wrong with loving yourself either, unless that is rationalized for actually being selfish, which is often the case. But you can really unselfishly love yourself. In fact, it is unavoidable if you love unselfishly at all. Because when you love unselfishly, you love all, and that includes yourself. And when you love unselfishly, you feel so good about yourself that you can't avoid loving yourself. But you don't ever really feel good about yourself when you love selfishly. Yourself might feel good temporarily, but you don't feel good about yourself. And if you don't feel good about yourself, how can you really be loving yourself? And how could a heart full of selfishness even find room for truly loving itself simultaneously? So it's a backwards what they say about loving yourself first. Now remember this, instead of loving yourself first, unselfishly love others first, and you will truly love yourself automatically. You just can't go wrong that way. The others is too often just a clever trick of selfish separate self to rationalize selfishness. Okay, I'll always remember that. Getting back to relationships, you touched upon the subject of what the signs were of selfishly or unselfishly loving in a relationship. But can you tell me more about that? Specifically, how can you tell if you are loving selfishly in a relationship? I already taught you this earlier. I know, I was just hoping for a greater clarification. I'm sorry if I'm being dense. Better? Okay. And it is very important. It is a very important thing to learn. One of the ways you can identify selfish love is, as I mentioned earlier, when you do a self-examination of your motives and you find that your actions or feelings of love are because you get some kind of energy or attention from the loved one. This is what most people call love. Here is a common phrase that makes a good example. Perhaps this will help clarify. I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. Yes, I've heard that. Yes. You've heard that. Yes. I nodded. That kind of love is conditional. It only gives if it is getting what it wants. That's what most relationships are built upon. That mutual agreement to give to each other's selves. Here's another one you might have heard before. It must be give and take. No, it must be give and give in order to work. Because if it is give and take, what happens when both feel they should be taking at the same time and think the other should be giving? And that happens all the time. Relationships like that don't last. They are disintegrating and full of turmoil. For each self wants and fears. And when it doesn't get what it wants or is confronted by its fears and dislikes, problems start. When people enter relationships like that, everything is perfume and roses for a while. Honeymoon period phenomenon. Because the selves are each getting so much energy, so much gratification. But after a while, one of the partners in the relationship always falls short and doesn't give as much as the other wants. Then negativity begins to snowball in a familiar cycle. Excuse me. One partner feels slighted and says or does something to hurt the other. Then the other reciprocates and hurts back. This negativity builds strength and momentum each time it goes back and forth. The relationship is damaged. Sometimes the damage can't ever be repaired and becomes just another coffin nail in the relationship's eventual death. It can be no other way in selfishly based relationships. Universal law is in effect here. Only in unselfish love is peace found, both for the giver and the receiver. Of course, the biggest warning sign of unselfish love is jealousy. Selfish love is also possessive and thus must spawn the most horrible and destructive emotion that exists, jealousy. Selfish love can only bring negativity and destruction in the end. How many have hurt or even killed those they supposedly loved because they loved her/him so much that they couldn't stand to lose them? What yak dung! What a grand deception! Such is pure selfishness, not true love. If you have true love, for someone or something, unselfish love, you want the objective of your love to be free and happy, regardless of the consequences to you. When your love is selfishly based, you care more about what you want and really care very little about the loved one, if you care at all. I didn't really know what else to ask him at this point. He'd answered all my questions thoroughly, and new questions about relationships wouldn't crop up until the future. The next time I had to deal with my most serious relationship issues, which I'll discuss later in the book. But this seems like the appropriate chapter to reveal more of the children's general teachings about the emotions and virtues that are integrally related to true love. So let's travel to another time, years later, when I was lecturing to a group of novices in the Great Meditation Hall about the children's teachings on the practical qualities of unselfish love, the real world qualities of unselfish love. Unselfish love is the most important way of being that there is. Why? Said novice Yusuf. With the exception of people who are hardened in darkness, virtually anyone can agree that kindness, compassion, caring, giving, creation are good things. Thus, these things are far more significant than any belief, any teaching, any wisdom, any knowledge. Even more important than the ancient texts and the children's teachings, far more important. If you don't understand that, you don't even really understand the teachings, because that's what they are all about. Those qualities are virtues that are the result of unselfish love. The oneness with God, are they not? Yes. That was a rhetorical question, Yusuf. For a moment I wondered if I was such a pain as a novice. We call these traits the basic spiritual virtues or qualities, and they are the natural results of true spiritual growth. If these qualities are not the outcome of your growth, then the growth is not really spiritual. Why? Again with the why. Because true spiritual growth moves you away from the world of separateness and selfishness and towards universal consciousness and oneness. Such a shift in consciousness can only result in caring for all. For you realize that all beings are you, all the universal spirit. For instance, you may see people who profess to be holy or cosmic, who meditate or pray, or people who have great metaphysical knowledge and developed abilities and so-called strengths through various programs or doctrines. Whatever they are getting out of it, if it's not making them more caring and compassion, it's not spiritual growth. Compassion. Compassion is the greatest of all these virtues that are a part of unselfish love. Compassion means feeling for others, caring about others. A person without compassion is truly empty and cold. There is such a thing as imbalanced compassion, however. If compassion clouds the mind and alone dictates your actions, can you make many mistakes? You can make many mistakes and end up harming yourself and the ones you care about. But this is a problem all too few people have. It is better to have too much compassion than not enough. But like all emotions, it should not overwhelm you and take control of you. Emotions should be feelers, sensors that we are open to, fully aware of, and can get information from, but that we are significantly transcendent of, so they do not control us. Unconditional love. Elder Peniel, is unselfish love the same as unconditional love? Very good question, Yusuf. I guess you can say unselfish love is a type of unconditional love, but if you interpret the words unconditional love literally, it means giving to or being supportive of someone regardless of their actions, no matter what. If we use that as the definition of unconditional love, then what we call unselfish love is different in an important way. Unselfish love does not mean giving the loved one anything they want or supporting any and all actions. Unconditional love like that could be harmful to the one you love. Unselfishly loving someone does mean that you will always care for them, always still care about what is best for them, regardless of what the loved one may do or choose. But there can be conditions set on interactions or support. What conditions should be set? It's a matter of a fixed rule. Everyone is different. It's not a matter of a fixed rule. Everyone is different. Everyone has different needs. There are some things that are the same, but each individual does have different things that should be allowed or not allowed. So how do you know where to draw the line and what to give or not give? Loving someone unselfishly automatically makes you give to the loved one what their whole being needs. But it does not just feed their wants and desires. In fact, unselfish love may actually require denying a loved one's desire. But whatever is required for the person, whether giving and or denying, both are done regardless of its consequences on you. Even if it means the person will hate you or fight you, you must do what is best for them. For example, consider the raising of children. Let's look at the application of unselfish love versus unconditional love and normal selfish love. In that scenario, there are times when you should not give a child what it wants because it's not in their best interest. They may want something that could harm themselves or harm someone or something else. But When unselfish love is not present, a child is likely to be given into when they persist or throw an ego tantrum. But if you give in, even if there's no physical harm that results, it can make them what is commonly called spoiled. The term spoiled is merely a euphemism for a person's selfishness being so consistently given into and well fed that the self grows in power and wants more and expects more. In the case of children, they become what people call little monsters. And in the case of adults, they become what's called selfish jerks or bitches. Child or adult, a person who's selfish is overindulged becomes quite difficult to deal with, and they lack civility and love for others. And you don't want to be the one who feeds such a thing, do you? No. That was a rhetorical question again, Yusuf. Does anyone else want to ask anything? Maya, I feel you have a question. Yes. Okay, I understand what you want to know. You've seen people who are often mean to their children. Sometimes they get very abusive. But that isn't what we mean by not giving in to them. Quite the opposite. You see, there is a common flip side of the coin for indulging someone's self. Since it is being done because the person's giving in is actually selfish, and the other aspect of their selfishness also comes out, sometimes rather than giving in to a child, the same parent who is not unselfishly loving will instead treat the child with anger or even violence, which also further creates bad programming, bad behavior, and a monster. But why do they give in sometimes and not others? Various selfish traits, laziness, not loving enough to deal with negativity, etc. How many times have you seen a parent tell a child not to do something and the child ignores them? The child ignores them because they know they can get away with it. Then the parent says no again. Still no results. Eventually the parent gets angry and either yells or strikes the child. What does that teach the child? Two things. One, it may be worth the gamble to see how far it can get away with something because they know the parent doesn't really mean what they say or back up their threats very often. And two, when the parent finally loses it, all the child knows is they are being attacked, hated, and that bigger or stronger is better and might makes right. All very bad lessons. On the other hand, an unselfishly loving parent will give loving instructions one time and then demonstrate that the absolute regularity if they are not listened to. A loving discipline will occur. Sure, it takes more work and ironclad consistency, and you must sometimes do things that are unpleasant both for yourself and for the child, such as taking away something the child likes, or grounding them, or isolating them, like sending them to their room, but always with love and kindness. Only such true loving action yields good results, and it yields remarkable results. The child will eventually not test its limits and end up happier, more loving, being itself. This applies to relationships also. If you tolerate harmful or unpleasant behavior in a mate or a friend, either because of unconditional love or because your relationship is based on selfish motives, then you have a mess. And when you finally lose it and get negative and angry, it will create even more of a mess. But if you love unselfishly, you may even be able to help someone overcome their problems by both not tolerating bad behavior and giving loving, positive direction at the same time. I want to know what love is. I need you to show me. By now, the importance of unselfish love should be clear. But how does one really get to know what unselfish love is? We gave little examples earlier in the chapter about how some parents may have tasted a bit of the joy of unselfish love by anonymously giving to their children under the guise of gifts from Santa Claus. But even that taste was virtually nothing compared to the full experience of being totally unselfishly loving, and in the mix of peace of mind, sadness, and bliss that accompany it. Nor does it give us a taste of what it's like to be totally unselfishly loved. In my later years, I discussed it with Zayn. Father, I don't know if you remember, but a year or so ago, we discussed how one could know when they are selfishly or unselfishly loving someone. No, I don't remember, but I know you always speak the truth. Now, Peniel, what do you need? We covered a great deal about my selfishly loving, but not enough about unselfishly loving. I am seeing changes in the way I deal with people as I love them more, and I also see the results of it. It can make such a difference. I have moments of unselfishly loving, and when I think about my personal experiences with the adept teachers here, I can imagine what a difference it will make in me if I become fully unselfishly loving all the time. And you have told me that my time to leave will be coming soon. Obviously, I can't or shouldn't leave until I achieve that kind of unselfish love as a permanent state. So, could you tell me more of what I need to know? Peniel, you will know all you need to know when your time has come. But, of course, I will answer your question. You know I look forward to our talks a great deal these days, as I do also. I love you more than I ever thought possible. We embraced for a moment, then he spoke. The fact is, most people have never experienced pure unselfish love, either giving it or receiving it. And how can anyone expect to even know what it is unless someone first loves them unselfishly? How would you describe colors to a person born blind or born colorblind? And how could you describe colors to someone else if you were born blind yourself and have never experienced color yourself? That would be even more difficult. And unselfish love is something that you can give unselfish. And unselfish love is something that you can give unselfish blind people that will describe it to them even more. It will show it to them, even though they have never experienced it themselves. In the future, after you are enlightened and have left here, when you meet people, it will almost always be the first time they have ever met someone who really loves them. And you will often be a stranger to them. It will always be a blessing for them, even though they may not know it or know what's going on. It will be more powerful than your words, even though it will be in harmony with both your words and your actions, because the experience of being unselfishly loved involves feeling something from someone, something subtle possibly, but something that you've never felt before. It also involves an inner spiritual kindling, a knowing, and actually seeing an example of the way someone lives and acts when they are universally conscious. Most people can't love unselfishly until they experience being loved unselfishly first. Too few have experienced the impact of being in the presence of a being who is fully unselfishly loving. But it is not by accident. It is because they have not been willing to experience it within themselves. They have not been willing to surrender to the universal spirit within them. When a person is willing to begin to change, to start to unselfishly love, then they will meet someone who loves them unselfishly. You will be meeting people like that all the time. People who are ready to change. People who have prayed or desperately hope for some kind of answers or guidance in their lives. This you will bring without even trying or doing anything. Experiencing being loved by a totally unselfishly loving being is a great blessing, and this can spark the flame of unselfish love within the loved one if they are open to change and to begin giving themselves. Unselfish love can spread this way. Author's note. Often the first time one ever experiences being unselfishly loved is from one's personal true teacher. I'll discuss this more in a later chapter. But now that there will be great pain, because often those who have completely opened up, we're almost finished with this chapter. Okay, because often those who you have completely opened up your great heart to and made yourself vulnerable to through your love will hurt you. You already know through that. Such is the price of being a loving servant of the universal spirit. Then there are those who are spiritually hardened or hiding from the light within, or even the brothers of the darkness. Depending on the severity of their opposition to the light, they will find your presence, your unselfish love, mildly disturbing to extremely annoying, to a reason for rage, anger, hatred, and even violence and murder. You have seen it in the history of all our kin. Look what they did to the Grand Master, even though he planned it himself to spread the word of unselfish love and oneness with God. The other side of the coin. Earlier you read that unselfish love and oneness were like two sides of a coin. Unselfish love is what a person does who knows they are one with God, the universal spirit. Unselfish love is the way of the flow of the universe, the way of the one. Unselfish love is the way of being in harmony with the universe and an instrument for doing the will of the universal spirit. Unselfish love is both the end result of breaking our illusion of separateness and a way of attaining oneness. Unselfish love makes living a meditation. While you can find a detailed, concise list of the children's specific meditation techniques in part 2 of this book, the concepts presented here are not just philosophy and stale dogma. They are, in a grand sense, also a technique, a way of living a special life, a universal lifestyle. Living life with an attitude of unselfish love is the technique of a universal lifestyle. And that is the essence within all the children's teachings. One of my discussions with Zayn, he taught me this concept. One day, I was asking him about meditation and telling him I had so many duties I couldn't find time for my meditations. Of course, this wasn't really true. I was just being lazy. This is what he had to say to me. Unselfish love is the way of eternal everyday life meditation. It spans 24 hours a day, every day. Even your sleeping hours, your dreams, can be a meditation. I would define meditation here as a being in the middle, perfectly balanced between the infinite and the finite. Manifesting the universal spirit, the infinite, in the physical plane, finite. Meditation has often been considered a process of stealing the mind, but that is not the whole of it. Just the stealing of the mind can be relaxation, concentration, or discipline. But, these build your mind into a strong tool for the universal spirit, but are prerequisites to true meditation. The mind must be still for you to be a channel for spirit, but just the stealing of mind, the revealing of tensions, etc., without the merging with the highest ideal you can conceive of and applying, manifesting, that is what, let me start that one over. The mind must be still for you to be a channel for spirit, but just the stealing of mind, the relieving of tensions, etc., without the merging with the highest ideal you can conceive of and applying, manifesting that is for what? Of what good is any belief or growth method if it doesn't make life better, more kind, more beautiful? If your life doesn't radiate these things, then your life is but that of a sun that doesn't shine. The opportunity is to grow, to give, and to unselfishly love is here every moment. Your whole life can be a constant meditation in action, a flow in harmony with universal flow. This is the song of life, the art of living. It is always, forever, now. For when one truly attains universal consciousness, everything else, every thought, every action reflects it. It is a change from a life of wanting and fearing to a life of giving and security. To give you somewhat of an example of aspects of your life that can radiate anew, here is a very incomplete list of just some of the everyday types of activities that can be a part of your constant meditation, your universal lifestyle. When approached in this way, even the mundane becomes a beautiful flowing art form, including relationships with others, walking, running, momentum, sex, driving, sweeping, washing dishes. Author's note: I've had some great dishwashing meditations. I'll tell you about them later. Breathing, opening, closing a door, waiting, doing things quickly without hurrying, eating, chopping wood, writing, drawing, singing, composing, talking, digging, planting, anything and everything. So tell me, you have no time for meditation? Again, the essence of it all is to manifest the universal spirit in and through the physical vehicle, body, mind, self, by living a life of unselfish love. You're going to hear this same thing over and over again. And in many ways, throughout these pages, it's not mere redundancy. It's being repeated to make the impression that everything always comes back to the same thing. And that one concept is all you need to realize in order for everything to fall into place. It is the master key to any door. The phantom attacks by night. In the years after I left the monastery, I traveled a great deal. During that time, I visited monasteries and spiritual communities of many different religions and paths. One spiritual community I stayed with for a few weeks had created a unique way for its members to experience unselfish love via giving to other members. They called it the phantom. And here's how it works. Let's say someone makes a cake or a coat or whatever and gives it to someone else in the community. Rather than giving it to them outright or wrapped with a little card letting them know who the gift is from, they leave it sneakily in the middle of the night with a note saying it is from the phantom. Their method ensures the anonymity of the giver. Thus, the only personal gain the giver gets is the joy of doing something nice for someone, the joy of giving, the joy of unselfishly loving. This ensures that the giving is being done for the right reason, unselfishly, and is thus not feeding the selfish, separate self. You might want to try some phantom giving yourself. It's not only good for you, it's fun. Whew, okay, that's the end of chapter 8. Chapter 9 will be starting on page 106. This has been the reading of The Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by Jon Peniel. Thank you very much for listening. Please, if you have not already, subscribe to the channel. Do hit the like button. Place a comment. Let's start a conversation, for this is for us all. So, until then, have the most benevolent day.